Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special mini series of Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. We're going to start an occasional mini series where we look at Fantastic Four comics. Specifically, we look at the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby original run. We're going to go through them epic by epic, but we may only do this every month or every 2 months. Does that sound right, Matt?
I'm reading it basically an issue a night for the last couple of months, and it's fun. I want to go all the way back to the beginning of the Fantastic Four after the film just to see how it all started out and to get some of the inspiration they used for the film. Bob's been having me read a lot of the really good FF stuff from the aughts. I just have no clue about anything before FF, before 1990. There's a whole 2 or 3 decades there where I'm just confused.
The interesting thing about Fantastic Four history, in general, I'm happy to look at more older comics with you. I love looking at older comics. I think they're fascinating, and they have an element of historical interest that, as much as it's fun to talk with you about like aughts and 2010s comics, and even though there is historical interest, it's still a little harder to see, a little harder to discuss. That said, I have a hot take on the Fantastic Four, which is before the Walt Simonson run, this Lee Kirby run in the 60s is the only run I really think is good.
Oh, wow.
We could look at some other stuff. Looking at some of Marv Wolfman and Roy Thomas's stuff might be interesting, but it's not great. People do like the John Byrne run, although it's not much discussed. I'm willing to look at all or some of that, but I really hate it.
Oh, well. Yeah, this seemed, at first going into this, Bob, knowing we were going to look at comics from the 60s, I was, this is going to be cheesy. And there is a certain part of these, almost every single issue we cover, that has that cheesy 60s aesthetic to it.
Oh, for sure.
And we're going to feel that as we go through. But there's also some really rich pieces that they end up going back to later on in future comics. That's the stuff I like. I like saying, okay, this is where they got this original idea. This is the infancy of this idea that then became this thing. And we'll point some of those out as we go through these issues.
I affirmatively think Lee Kirby FF is one of the great runs of all time. Even it does have some cheese, it does have some false notes, it has, as we will talk about, a lot of repetitions. Although that's hardly even a criticism, that's just the way comics were there, and nobody was under the illusion that there should be repetitions, right? So we're going to talk about this the way we do season recaps on the show, where we briefly talk about all 18 issues. This is the first Fantastic Four epic collection, The World's Greatest Heroes, so number 1 through 18. So we're going to briefly go through all 18, a couple observations about each, and then you want to explain our 3 categories, Matt?
Right, so we have the great, the comics that are amazing, the best, all right? This is the stuff you don't want to miss out. You want to read this. We suggest you read it. Then we have the good without being important. These are comics that they're okay, but they're not necessary for the plot or anything going on here. And then we have our dumpster fire, which are the complete crap. And those are the ones you should avoid at all costs, or if you want a good laugh, pick those up out of the dumpster fire.
For sure. So to start with number 1, I was wondering if I would have to argue with you about number 1. I would put number 1 in the great category, not so much because it is great, but just because of the legacy of this issue. It introduces these 4 characters who have, with a couple of years of exceptions, been in continual comics since 1961. That's pretty astonishing. And I will say it also introduces the Mole Man, who is a fun villain. It's interesting how relatively rare the Mole Man is. He doesn't reappear in this collection, right?
No, he doesn't, which is interesting. There's another interesting point we'll get to later on, in that we see a lot of the villains teaming up.
And
it's
we
like,
see a lot of Namor in particular.
Right. What combination can we put these two together in to see what kind of mischief can take place? It's interesting, but we never see Mole Man come back.
Which is interesting, yeah, that he's the inaugural, and he's still an important FF villain. He was just in the FF 2025 movie, although more as comedic relief than a villain. But yeah, man, his staff duel, it's real bad in this. That sucks, but
it's relatively weak compared to what you see today.
This issue introduces Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben, and that's pretty.
There's a couple of things. The first issue starts off with a signal gun. This must have been the coolest thing back in the 60s. I see these all the time in comics. Being able to shoot up smoke that says 4 FF or whatever it is, the 4 sign, the 4 symbol. And this was later replaced with Johnny making the 4 symbol. But back then, this thing was a big deal. Having a signal gun. Dude, all characters have to have something like this, because you had Batman with his bat signal. Superman had his watch thing that he could contact Jimmy Olsen. I guess everybody needed a way to communicate.
It's a more mobile version of the bat signal,
Right.
the technologically superior version of the bat signal, which I think might be in Kirby's mind.
Okay, maybe that's what it is. It was just odd to start the issue out with this piece. I'm like, okay, they got a signal gun. The 60s, it's a different time. The other thing I want to highlight in this issue, Bob, is we're introduced to Munster Isle, which becomes something we go to many a time later on.
One thing that you could historically note, and this is definitely true of the second issue and the third issue as well. I think it's really only in the fourth issue that you're really, really firmly cementing that this is a superhero comic and not a sci-fi anthology comic from the 50s, or not a kaiju or monster anthology comic in the 50s. It's interesting how much the kaiju play a role in this first issue. The FF are, granted, they're on the title. That's different than how the 50s anthology books do it, but they're almost your generic 1950s adventure.
For adventurers, Bob, they don't have costumes in this first issue, which blows my mind.
As much as I love the FF suits, right, and the few versions of it, the original versions are great. There is something really cool about them in their Mad Men clothes. If they had stayed in the Mad Men clothes, on the one hand, maybe that wouldn't have been successful. But I do think it makes for a cool image of these people in early 60s formal wear doing these amazing and grotesque things with their bodies. To move on to issue 2, this is, again, the very much a monster comic or a sci-fi anthology story with the Skrulls, right? And I especially love, although maybe I should say, this is the introduction of the Skrulls. So speaking of legacy, this is deeply influential on the course of the Fantastic Four.
Oh, yeah. It's a very important comic. We see the Skrulls in the MCU. That was a big, big thing for a while. There's still a thing going on in the MCU, but this is where they come from. This is the origin. I mean, this is right here. It's really interesting. And one thing I did want to point out, too, is that we see for the first time Mr. Fantastic squeezing through a tiny space, not a flat space, a screw hole. That's a power I've never seen him use before, Bob, ever. That must be something that got retconned.
He's a cat.
Just because you can stretch doesn't mean you can squeeze so thin that you can get in. No, not happening. Too far there.
Another interesting motif that starts in this issue is looking at these all at once and thinking about them for the podcast. I hadn't thought about this when I casually read the Lee Kirby run before the pandemic, 2018 or 2019. I'd read reprints of it here and there before.
Right.
But when I read the whole run, I got it at a local college library, I think in 2019, 2018. And I didn't notice this then, but the Fantastic Four doppelgangers are a very common presence in these early FF issues. And the Skrulls being shape-shifting aliens obviously provide us with the first instance of that. That's it.
And I love how they just start out doing random crime as the Fantastic Four. It's not anything major world Earth scale. It's like they're robbing banks as Invisible Girl.
It's just another motif here.
Yeah.
Ben Grimm, right?
Yeah, Bob. And I went through and I figured this out throughout the entire epic, and I'll probably do it for the rest of it as we continue. But I just want to point out how many times Ben Grimm returns to his human form. In issue number 2, folks, Ben Grimm returns to his human form for only a few seconds.
I do think that's going to radically drop later in the run. At this point, the horror of Ben is almost more the horror of the transformation, I think. In that way, he's a precursor to the Hulk.
Right.
But I think later on in the run, maybe I'm wrong, I'll be curious to see, but I think Lee and Kirby settle on, no, the horror is being trapped in the thing. The horror is not reverting and re-reverting.
They just like to draw that whole scene, though, his face shifting. It probably was really scary back in the 60s.
The last thing I'll bring up comes here at the end of the issue, and it's a double thing. On the one hand, these issues are very, very meta, and maybe there was a moment, there might be meta moments in the first issue that I didn't attend to when I was rereading this, but in number 2, this is very explicitly meta as Reed gets some Marvel monster comics, some 1950s Marvel comics, and it's, hey, Skrulls, this is what we got. Be afraid. And it works, which is just delightful.
Yeah.
And then a very Twilight Zone 1950s sci-fi anthology twist ending of he gets the Skrulls to live as cows in the end, right? Which in the 90s will birth a really fun miniseries we should look at by Grant Morrison and Mark Miller called Skull Kill Crew.
That sounds actually interesting. I have an idea probably what happened there, but that's interesting.
Tainted.
Right.
Tainted Skrull.
And it's what kills me, too, is the Skrulls are that content as being cows. They say, legit. They're okay with it.
Wouldn't you be content as a cow, Matt?
I guess, as long as I'm in the grass.
The other thing to say about that comic, the Skull Kill Crew comic, is do you remember the fur over mad cow disease?
Oh,
Very much
that was
like
part of it.
that.
Oh, wow.
So, listeners, we would pretty affirmatively put number one and two, the Skrulls on the debut of the Fantastic Four, as great comics, even with a few liabilities, especially in number one. I still think both are great comics. Number three, I would merely good,
Yeah.
honestly. Menace of the Miracle Man, pretty forgetful. I'm sure the Miracle Man has returned, but he's not that.
Bob said merely good for this one. Somewhat disagree, Bob, because there's a couple of things that make this issue memorable, although it has nothing to do with the villain, which is a joke. The villain's pointless, Miracle Man. He's just a hypnotist type, illusionist type guy. So there's a nice cutaway of their headquarters, which I thought was really cool in this issue. So if you want to see what it looks like inside their building, I always got geeked out over that stuff when I was younger. We get to see their fantastic car for the first time that it separates, which was a new thing and was really cool, I'm sure, for kids. Check that out. Their car transforms into 4 pieces. They retell the origin again here. Is it my understanding that these issues are probably not easy to come by after they've gone through their first print?
Oh, for sure. They just sit on the newsstand until the next one comes out, and then they're pulped.
So if you didn't get that, if you didn't get issue 1 or 2, you're at a complete loss. So that's my understanding of why their origins retold.
Maybe you could find them in a bookshop or an antique shop or a flea shop.
Okay.
You've got to look, and there's no certainty. So yeah, that's why also in this era, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman are so repetitive, right?
They were always going back to the origin to explain what happened. What's interesting, though, too, is the art changes each time, and it seems like it looks better and better each time they retell the origin.
It's Kirby drawing it each time, but it's Kirby changing how he presents it and refining the presentation, for
Correct.
sure.
Right. This issue,
one thing, Matt, just to defend this slightly, I think there's a lot of good kaiju action in this issue. That's why I would still say it's in the good or the okay, but it's not in the dumpster.
Oh, no, I wouldn't put it in the dumpster fire. It's an issue worth reading. But they do get their first costumes as well, Bob. And who sewed their first costumes? It was Sue, Bob. Sue made their costumes. This was 1960-something, Bob. Come on.
So number 4 is when we get into some amazing territory. Like Matt said, they're fully superheroes now with the costumes that Sue sewed for them. Although, man, things booties on the cover of 4. Rough stuff.
That should not be part of the costume ever.
No, that part was a bad call. But in number 4, we get wild and we do the first Golden Age character revival of the Silver Age Marvel Comics, right? Where Johnny is in this men's hostel and he comes across an amnesiac Namor the Submariner for the Golden Age. And he does Matt's favorite shaving technique.
He uses fire to shave the Submariner's beard off.
Which is great.
That's got to stink. That's got to smell bad, right?
I don't know. Maybe there's something about Namor's water-resistant hair where maybe it smells worse.
He's just stinking up the whole hostel.
Well, I mean, Matt, I get the feeling it's not a freshly smelling joint.
You don't think the hostel's nice and clean?
I think it's a flop house, man. I don't think it smells great.
But Bob, there are clearly rules on the wall.
I don't think this is the first time human hair or human flesh is burned.
They had to add a rule to the list of don't burn the other people's beards off.
He does the brilliant thing to snap out of Namor's amnesia by giving him a Golden Age comic. It's
so meta. That's the thing about Fantastic Four. And maybe I haven't read enough 60s, Bob, but do most of the comics, do they tend to go toward this meta territory?
I think the use of comics in FF relatively declines as the run continues.
Okay.
There's still some things, and there very much will be the thing that FF comics about the FF are produced in the Marvel universe, and some characters, including Johnny, read them sometimes,
right.
And that's occasionally grist for plot. But there's another meta strategy we'll get to in a minute that starts here, and it never becomes super common, but it does become a regular. I would definitely say number 4 is in the great category. It's an all-timer issue as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, of course. And it's also in this issue, Bob, we get Ben Grimm. This is issue number 4. He returns to his human form once again. Twice in 4 issues.
Then to move on to issue number 5, we have the coming of the Submariner, introducing Namor, or reintroducing Namor more precisely. And then we have number 5, Prisoners of Dr. Doom, which is introducing Dr. Doom. I've heard some people complain that in this issue, Doom's scheme doesn't make a lot of sense. This issue, Doom isn't fully Doom. To those, I say you're demonstrably wrong. We find out that Ben Grimm was actually Blackbeard, which also one could argue, Matt, is his 3rd human transformation.
Bob, and I had never heard of this story until I read the Coffee Table book. You should totally adapt this for the MCU, Bob. This should be the Robert Downey Jr. This should be the whole thing.
For whatever weird reason, I think that works. I can really picture. I don't like Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom in general, but for whatever reason, Doom in this issue, Robert Downey Jr. would really fit. I do want to frame. This will be one of my favorite issues we talk at the end, but the first splash page, it's in 106 in the edition of the Epic we're looking at, where you have Doom looming over a chessboard where he has pieces of the FF, and he has a vulture at his side, and he has books with titles like Demons and Science and Sorcery.
How can you not say that's full on Doctor Doom right there? That's everything.
It's not everything, but it's an awful, awful lot of things.
What also it includes, Bob? A helicopter. He's got a helicopter and it's scary looking.
You really like Doom's modes of transportation.
I really do. And he's got a jetpack. I've never seen that jetpack before. That thing was cool.
Oh, yeah. Johnny's reading a Hulk comic, getting a little cross promotion in there.
There you go. They were smart back then.
Yeah, so totally great issue. Love number 5. Definitely put it in the great category.
Love Submariner, and you love Doctor Doom, so let's put them together.
Chocolate and peanut butter, man. Chocolate and peanut butter. So number 6 is the Captives of the Diabolical Duo. And not just do Doom and Namor ally to defeat the Fantastic Four, but Doom then betrays Namor and launches both the Fantastic Four and Namor and the Baxter Building into space, which is going to be a reoccurring thing. And then as they're in space, as they're in near Earth orbit, we will see both Namor and Doom climbing meteor showers. It's amazing. It's amazing.
And Bob, just to be clear, they don't just get shot into space. Their whole headquarters get shot into space. The building itself, the whole building. And then you've seen Namor on land, Bob, and you've seen Namor in water, but you have never seen Namor swimming in space.
It's really cool. I actually do wonder if you go back to Golden Age Namor comics, I could totally see this being the first time he's in space and this being a Silver Age 60s thing. I could also see there being some random Golden Age story where he is in space. But nonetheless, yeah, I take your point.
Yeah, we're not reading those. Those are really old.
We should look at the Torch versus Submariner fight from the Golden Age at some point. That's cool.
I would like to see something just to get an idea of it.
Then, Matt, before you launch a headquarters into space, what do you need to do?
Get another cutaway of the headquarters, Bob, and it's different. It's so weird. It's cool looking.
All right, listeners, we're on a 3-issue amazing streak. We reintroduced Namor. We introduced Dr. Doom. We teamed him up. We broke him apart. But then we have to get to another mid-episode, another mid-issue. That would be issue number 7, Prisoners of Kurgo, Master of Planet X. Again, there's some really funny, wacky stuff in this, but ultimately this belongs in the good category with number 3, right?
This is one I agree with, Bob. Whereas the earlier one you mentioned I would have put in the great category, this one definitely sticks in the good. There's nothing that memorable about it other than that they do go, it's the first time we see them go to another planet.
Oh, that's a good point, because we saw them in space a couple of times already.
Right.
We haven't seen them land on the alien world, which will later become a key part of their kind of explorer gimmick.
No, they're not on that. They're not in that direction yet.
Moving on to number 8, that's Prisoners of the Puppet Master. That introduces another major villain as well as his stepdaughter. Very historically important, even though it's a pretty good story anyway, just because of the legacy of Puppet Master and Alicia, you probably have to put it in the great category. You know?
Oh yeah, this one goes in the great category for sure. You do have a scene where Ben Grimm once again returns to his human form. This is the 3rd time.
Of course.
We're in issue 8. This particular story was retold in the 1994 Fantastic Four cartoon pilot.
Oh,
the 2-parter, this was the whole story. I mean, it was almost panel for panel at some points.
The story they told on the talk show?
Yes, this is the story they told on the talk show with the puppets. Also, you find out too that Reed can actually be shot with an AK-47 and his skin will not be pierced, which I thought was interesting. He's theoretically bulletproof, I guess, because his skin is so elastic. It just bounces off. We've seen the bigger missiles bounce off of him, but the bullets, they don't do anything either.
Nice.
Most of the issues end with a pinup of one of the characters. It's usually Sue.
This is true.
But this issue ended with a feature page that talks about the Torch's superpowers and how there's some pseudoscience there involving how he controls it and what's happened to his molecules. But we find out that he actually sprays flame-resistant chemicals all over his stuff in his bedroom so he doesn't accidentally light it on fire. And they show an image of him doing this. I thought it was hilarious. And
Glad you drew my attention to this because, to be honest, I just skipped right over.
the only other reason I looked at it too, Bob, is because the omnibus that I was reading had the fan mail at the end, and the fans were demanding this type of stuff. You would think they're like, "How does he do this? How do you explain this?" And then they're like, "Don't worry, in issue so and so, we'll have a feature on Mr. Fantastic and the links he can go to stretch his arms and all this stuff."
Interesting when you frame it like that and use the term feature. Not that that's wrong, but when you use the term feature and you talk about the fan demand, it almost does remind you that I think of these comics as like narrative first
Mhm.
and foremost, but they are magazines, right? They are like gossip magazines,
Oh, yeah.
fan magazines and they're doing almost like weird journalism.
They are. That was actually a fascinating part for me to read the fan mail back then and see what these people were actually. It reminds me of the weird stuff you see online now, where it's
Oh, yeah.
very specific
Yeah.
issues that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but they need to know.
Yeah, people just getting hung up on things. Well, to keep going, another absolutely amazing issue, one of my favorites in this whole run is number 9, Into the Fantastic Four. This introduces a milestone that will come back again and again in the series, not just in the larger 50, 60-year history of the Fantastic Four. This comes back again and again, and that's the Fantastic Four going bankrupt. Do you remember that really bad Marvel Knights Fantastic Four series we tried to read?
I did. That's why I quit it. I don't want to read a comic and learn about debt consolidation.
I'm open to it. It just needs to be better done than that.
Especially because it was written at the same time as Mark Waid. I got Mark Waid over here, and I got this thing where they're dealing with debt on this side.
So they go to Hollywood. They link up with Namor, who has used treasure he found at the bottom of the ocean to become a Hollywood mogul. He's got a smoking jacket. He's romancing Sue at dinner, at lavish Hollywood dinners. And then the other thing I just really wanted to highlight as a major plot point from this is it's got a really amazing Namor and Ben fight on the beach. It's really good. It goes on for quite a while. It's sectioned off into, I think, 2 different chapters, that fight.
And don't worry, Bob, because in that fight, Ben, for the 4th time, reverts back to human form.
Oh, man. I bet there's a good pseudo-scientific explanation for that, Matt. There's a good pseudo-scientific explanation for the next 2 things you're going to describe.
Because on page 226, Namor is struggling to see Sue Storm. He can't see her because she's turned invisible. That's her power. He goes on to describe how he's able to see Sue, Bob. So he takes on the radar sense of a fish that's from the lowest depths of the sea. He explains this whole thing to Sue out loud. They have no eyes, but can sense the presence of others by using their radar-type instincts, as I shall do to you. And then it clearly shows a panel from the editor that says, to explain more fully how Namor uses his radar vision, this is the way Sue actually is, invisible to the normal eye. Now, they drew the outline of Sue in the picture. She's not actually invisible in this picture. I can still see her. So Jack Kirby is making me feel like I'm insane. And then he shows what Namor sees, which is just her outline, but completely white. Dude, really?
Oh, man. Yeah. Since we're doing this, and like we said, listeners, this is going to be a very occasional series, maybe only every month or every 2 months. But once we finish Lee Kirby FF, we really got to do at least the Lee and Ditko Spider-Man, and maybe at least some of the Lee and Romita Spider-Man too, because there's a lot of explanations like that as well.
The other pseudoscience, Bob, is the second feature, because they did 2 features for Human Torch at the end of these comics. This feature discussed how he's able to fly by heating up his molecules so they're lighter than air.
Fair enough, Matt. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So in number 10, we've got another great issue. It's the return of Dr. Doom. And the main plot is Doom manipulating these peaceful aliens in the flashback to return to Earth to try to get his revenge on the Fantastic Four again. And man, just seeing Doom as the master manipulator, almost as this satanic figure, very cool. We also get a very cool early Doom thing fight here.
This is one of the better Doom issues so far. As far as this goes, though, they do Lee and Kirby draw themselves in this issue. This is what we were talking about being meta earlier.
And not only they're interacting with Dr. Doom, and he off panel shows them his face, and they're cringing in horror.
Right. So it's so meta, and I don't know if I'm okay with that. It's interesting too because later on we find out that Kirby's actually the god of the Fantastic Four. So he makes his first appearance here in issue 10.
It's been maybe 2 weeks since I looked at this issue, Matt, so you might have to correct me. But in this, it's already clear, right, that Lee and Kirby are doing the Fantastic Four comic about the real Fantastic Four in universe.
Correct.
So Doom is coming to them to complain about the fictional portrayal of him in the universe. Is that right?
Yeah, it's almost like Kirby and Lee's job is to report what the Fantastic Four do.
Yeah.
So that's how everybody knows about them. To finish up with this issue, Bob, it ends with them just shrinking Doctor Doom until he's tiny. And he just keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, which I thought was just pure evil. They don't seem to have a problem with it. I do want to go back, Bob, because in issue 11, we find out that the Fantastic Four has been getting all this fan mail, and they're getting the fan mail because they're famous from the comics.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it all connects.
It does all connect. It all comes together. I will say, I don't have much to say about 11. This introduces the Impossible Man, so it is historically very important. But, dear listeners, if you do not know, the Impossible Man is just the FF's answer to Mr. Mxyzptlk. He's even more insufferable than Mixie from the Superman comics. I really hate the Impossible Man. I almost want to say dumpster fire, but this is a historically important issue, so I would just say throw it in the number one.
I'd be fine putting it in the dumpster fire. The one thing I just want to point out, Ben Grimm does return to his human form for the 5th time. And the thing about the issue, too, is it's in 2 parts. The first part is them answering fan mail and us getting another origin story. And then the second part is the Impossible Man. And neither are very entertaining.
We gloss over this for the sake of time, listeners, but at least in the first 2 issues, and maybe a couple of the others, you have basically 2 separate stories, Fantastic Four issues. And that's true of some of the early Spider-Mans as well. I think it needs to be in the good category because of its historical significance, but I do hate the Impossible Man. I did want to ask you one other.
It belongs in a museum.
It does belong in a museum, unfortunately. So obviously, Mr. Mxyzptlk is the major influence here, but I do wonder, and I don't know, do you have any idea when the Great Gazoo on the Flintstones was introduced? Because there's a very, very similar energy and appearance. Not exactly the same, but very, very similar energy and appearance between Impossible Man and Great Gazoo. And I wonder if one influenced the other or if both are ripping off some other character I'm not familiar with.
He also looks like Martian Manhunter from when Frank Miller draws him.
Which I think probably Miller is probably trying to be playful and intentional about
He's
that,
so
if I had to guess.
playful Frank Miller.
Hey man, Dark Knight Returns and Dark Knight Strikes Again are very playful.
So playful.
That's the thing I always struggled about why people took those books so deadly seriously.
I think that's your mind frame when reading.
No, they're objectively ridiculous comics.
I don't know. Maybe we just have different definitions of playful.
Satirical, something that's also about a green character, that it's a significantly better green character than the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones or the Impossible Man. That's the Incredible Hulk. Number 12 is a book-length epic where the FF meet the Hulk. We see the first encounter of the Thing and the Hulk. The army's involved. There's a lot going on, but suffice it to say, it's a great issue.
I also learned, Bob, in issue 12, we get a brand new Fantastic Car that actually stays the same look even till now.
Variations, but
it's 4 pods, one in the center, and then the other, it's almost the top of a bus. And it's floating. That really dumb-looking car they have, the one that it's boring, it's got rails on it.
I see what you're saying. Let's keep moving to one of my absolute favorite issues, which is paradoxical because it introduces one of my absolute least favorite characters. And that's number 13. It's Red Ghost and his incredible super apes, or I think his indescribable super
They're
apes.
indescribable, Bob. That's why you have to draw them on the comic.
Yeah,
Can't describe them with
they're
words.
drawable, but they're not described. This is another example of Fantastic Four doppelgangers, right? We get it through Doom's specific traps for the Fantastic Four. We get it from the Skrulls and later the Super Skrull impersonating them. We get it from the Puppet Master making replicas of them, right? We get all these different Fantastic Four doppelgangers. But here we get it as the Red Ghost has Sue Storm's powers, and he has 3 super apes who have the powers of Reed, Ben, and Johnny. I just love that. I think it's absolutely genius. This is also the first time the FF is on the moon, I believe.
Right.
Which is cool. And this is also the introduction on the moon of the dude who chills in the moon, Utah the Watcher. I hate Utah the Watcher. Utah Watcher is awful. There's never been a good comic that predominantly concerns itself with Utah the Watcher. But nonetheless, I have to forgive this issue for introducing Red Ghost and the Super Apes, so I put it in the great category.
Me and my brother used to, when we were real young, we used to hate the Watcher because we just thought it was a big baby. And we didn't understand how it fit into Marvel. Why is there always this big baby hanging around? This is stupid.
Jack Kirby's a great artist, but Utah the Watcher is one of his absolute worst costumes.
Yeah.
Roman baby.
Exactly. We were supposed to get Red Ghost in the Fantastic Four film. He was played by John Malkovich. You do see one of his super apes, though. In one of the scenes, I think Mr.
And
Fantastic
don't
kicks
you
him or something.
do you even see the Red Ghost in an animated scene later in
Yes.
like the mid-credit scene?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you see an animated version.
I gotta say, as much as I love the Red Ghost, I don't need to see the Red Ghost in live action. I don't need to see him played by John Malkovich. So the fact that we were spared that or denied that, yeah, it's fine. I don't have strong opinions about it.
The other thing I want to ask Bob too, the blue area of the moon, doesn't that eventually become like the headquarters for the Inhumans?
Hell, it may even actually the Inhumans may no, they're not. No, they're still on Earth at this point. Although maybe they were on the blue area at some point prior in history.
But this is the same place, right?
I think so.
And once again, it's
But
so fascinating to me because the actual humans during this time had not landed on the moon yet.
humans are definitely later going to live on the moon. The blue area is also where Jean dies at the end of the Dark Phoenix, or appears to die.
See, we've got all this rich history, Bob.
Well, Matt, we keep the team up formula going for number 14. We feel Submariner and Doom, they've been through too much together. They've had a nasty split. So that relationship isn't working anymore. So Submariner gets a new boyfriend, and it's the merciless puppet master.
I feel like that's the kind of the motif they went for after they created some villains and those issues sold. Let's give them more.
Yeah, I still really like this one. I would put it in the great category.
It is.
But it does beg the question, Matt, do you like Doom or Puppet Master better as a partner for Namor?
I would think they both end up turning on him anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's either way, you're not going to get what you want.
The Doom Namor partnership / rivalry is long established, right? They keep teaming back up and breaking up throughout the long history of Marvel Comics. So that's cool. The Puppet Master is unexpected. I don't know that you ever see Puppet Master and Namor on the page again together, so it's interesting in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting combination. But then issue 15, Bob, we do get another combination.
It's another book-length saga, another alliance, but it's an alliance of two new characters. It's the Mad Thinker and his awesome android. I'm also very fond of the Mad Thinker and his awesome android. Not as fond as I am of Red Ghost and his indescribable super apes, but I'm still very fond of the Mad Thinker. I was really excited about this issue. I would put it in the great category.
And Bob, Sue does get a new hairdo, so that is very important.
Indeed. She does. Well, Matt, you've talked a lot about the shrinking motif in these issues. You talk about stretch powers being shrinking powers. You talk about the cruelty of the FF just letting Doom shrink and shrink. And then this all comes to a head. Issue number 16, The Micro World of Dr. Doom, with special guest star, the amazing Ant-Man.
I'm never going to get tired of seeing Ant-Man shoot himself out of a tiny cannon. It just never gets old.
Matt, of the things I did not expect of our time with the FF, you becoming a mark for the Ant-Man. That was not on my bingo card.
Didn't he punch his wife, though?
Not the Ant-Man in Future Foundation that's Scott Lang. Hank Pym, and that's Scott Lang.
So what you're trying to say, Bob, is I'm thinking this is that Paul Rudd Ant-Man, and it's really the Michael Douglas Ant-Man. Okay.
Michael Douglas Ant-Man's the worst.
Put it in the dumpster fire. Well, now I'm going to have to go back and change my favorite issue.
What also happens
in
this issue?
The 6th time Ben Grimm returns to his human form. He's switched back 6 times.
Nice. And then I foreshadowed number 17 inadvertently. It's defeated by Dr. Doom. And this is the one where Doom has the very specific traps for the powers of each member.
They're very specific, including Invisible Woman's, which is like a bunch of sticks.
I think the idea is that it confines her movements enough that her invisibility isn't a factor because she can't escape.
She can't concentrate because she's having to constantly shift her body in multiple tantric positions to ensure that it was a horrible trap. There's also these things, Bob, in this issue, these floating ghost things that look like they're from Casper or something. I don't know what they are, but they don't really serve a purpose. And there's a JFK appearance on page 405 that I thought was kind of cool. Nikita Khrushchev on the next page. And then, Bob, once again, this is the next issue. Ben Grimm returns to his human form for the 7th time.
7 times and 18 issues, Matt.
That's right.
Well, Matt, we're going to end it out with number 18, A Skrull Walks Among Us. This is the debut of the Super Skrull, right?
Right.
Climaxes are large trove of FF doppelgangers with the red apes and the Skrulls. And yeah, what did you like about this issue, Matt? Despite some weaknesses, I would definitely put the Micro World of Dr. Doom, defeated by Dr. Doom, and the Super Skrull debut in the great category. But what stood out to you?
Okay, the only panel that I saw in all these comics, that there's some cool stuff, I'll admit, with all the Fantastic Four's powers and everything. But the one panel that stuck out so hard to me was the Super Skrull who is invisible and he has a flaming bow and arrow. It's made out of fire, the whole bow and the whole arrow, not just the arrow, the whole thing. And he's aiming it. That is the most badass villain I've ever seen, and I've seen so far.
Well, Matt, we made it through 18 issues of FF Comics. We think 15 of them are great, or at least I think 15
Yeah.
of them are great. We think 3 are okay. That's a pretty good ratio.
You know, I think 16 are great. You think, and 2 are good. So we're pretty on the same. We're on
Matt,
the same page.
16 is your magic number because at least prior it was your favorite issue too, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just gonna go ahead and read what I put as my favorite issue, Bob, just so you can gloat. Number 16. I think it's awesome how far we can go back in FF history to see the relationship Ant-Man has with the FF to where he eventually becomes a member of Future Foundation.
In fairness, Matt, I think you're being needlessly hard on yourself. The
Yeah.
Ant-Man FF have a long brand association. I don't think
It's
that,
not a
you know,
reason for it to be
saying
your
that-
favorite. We'll stick with favorite issue number 16. It's still a good issue. What's your favorite issue, Bob?
I'm going to have to go with my boy, the Red Ghost, to number 13, which, again, I hate Utah the Watcher so much, but I love the Red Ghost. So what was your least favorite, which I think we agree on?
We pretty much agree on, yeah. Issue 11, it was just too meta at the beginning with the fan mail piece, and then the Apostle Man's lame. It's just a bad issue. I would be willing to put it in a dumpster fire.
Although the fan mail is a reoccurring motif throughout the Lee Kirby run, although I don't think it's necessarily hit as hard later as it is now, but it is definitely still a reoccurring motif. Who was your favorite FF member in these issues?
My favorite member is Johnny, and it's primarily because I learned so much about his powers and everything from this, even though the pseudoscience is kind of lame. It's still interesting.
Star of these issues,
Yeah.
right? Probably by the point we're at, he already has his solo spinoff.
Honestly, his character is so consistent with what it's remained throughout the years that I think that's interesting too.
In some ways, that's the curse of Johnny, right? On every
Yes.
run, it's, oh, Johnny has to mature this time.
Right.
And you get to the next run, and it pretty much resets it to basically how Johnny's always been.
So I appreciate Johnny. And to say the others, Invisible Girl is not the character she needs to be at this point, obviously. And then Reed Richards, I like Reed.
Reed's a prick, man.
Yeah, he's a dick. And quite frankly, his power set's insane, which I do like seeing that. Since a lot of people have bitched about it in the movie, and now I can kind of see where they're coming from. His power set's insane in these early issues. The stuff he can do.
Visually interesting.
It is, yeah. And then with Ben Bob, which I believe you've decided is yours, correct?
Which is maybe a little anachronistic. Maybe if I was taking these issues more on their own terms and not like with my whole relationship with the FF, it wouldn't be Ben. Because Ben is very all over the place, very manic, very crazy.
Right? He's super manic. Super manic. He gets angry at dumb stuff. I want to get onto I'm a teacher. I'm trying to get onto him. Shut up.
I think this calms down, but in some of the early issues, there really is the fear that, oh, is Ben going to be a villain, right?
Has the radiation affected his brains when he is the thing? Is he like the Hulk and just gets angry?
Yeah,
and
that's
mad?
very plausible based on what we see here. All that said, there's a lot of good Ben stuff. Not so much his human transformation, although I agree with you, it's important to note that. But one of the things I love about Ben is when he goes incognito with the hat and the sunglasses and the scarf and the trench coat, which is a very frequent motif. And I think my favorite example of that is the opening splash page for number 12, which is the Hulk issue. And you see Ben and Alicia walking through a crowd, and he's telling Alicia he gets his kicks from low down New Orleans jazz rather than the classical music concert they just went to. I thought that was great.
Well, Bob, when it comes to least favorite character, it's 100% Invisible Girl. Not because she's a girl, but because they don't give her anything to do.
In a way, it is because it's a girl that they don't give her anything to do. But that's a Stan and Jack problem.
Very much a Stan and Jack problem, yes. They don't know what to do with her other than just make her a damsel in distress and invisible. And when do we get her? Do you know when we get the cool powers? When does she start getting that stuff?
And she does start manifesting stronger powers later in the run. I don't think Stan and Jack ever really get to a good place with Sue. I think it gets better than it is now, and they do amp up her powers. But unless I'm forgetting some really cool stuff, I think she's always just stuck as the girl in the Stan and Jack run, which really sucks.
I will say, though, too, some of the issues she does get a little more to do. You do see them trying to give her more action. But but then at the same time, they make her the most girliest of girls they possibly can with some of the stuff they have her doing. Like, oh, she's a girl, so obviously she should get her hair done. Oh, she's a girl, obviously she needs to go shopping. They give her the most stereotypical girl thing they can think of to do, which it's a sign of that time.
You got a very persuasive case for Sue. I'm going to go with Reed just because, like we said, Reed's a prick. But I did want to flag two of my very favorite moments with Reed in this collection. One is the first page of number one, which you already talked about, but it's Reed in the silhouette in a window holding the signal gun, which you're not sure of the signal gun at that point. That's a very cool image, and it does point to this interesting thing about when you first beat the FF in the first issue. Are they villains? You're not fully sure what they are yet. That's so that unpredictability of them is nice. And then there's a very cool scene in issue number 13 where you see Reed in an asbestos suit with a thing like helmet stretching in the asbestos suit. That's the Red Ghost issue. I thought that was a really cool visual. Matt, who's your favorite villain?
My favorite villain, Bob's Super Scroll.
Mine is going to be Namor. Obviously, he had a history in the 40s, right? But he's much more fully formed than Doom in these issues. And him as a crooked Hollywood producer with Ben in number 9 and his duel with Ben in that issue. Great stuff. Love him lying and getting betrayed by both Doom and the Puppet Master. Love Namor. Matt, I think we all know who our least favorite villain is, right?
Oh, yeah, Impossible Man. We both hate him. My favorite panel is on page 388. And it's Doom's potential bride explaining how this alien talk will use the Fantastic Four for manual labor. And the image shows Reed as a bridge across a mountain, and they're rolling carts over him. It shows Sue making potatoes with her hair all in a mess. It shows Johnny having to like burn up rocks and things, and it has the Thing hauling diamonds while being whipped. That's what Doom wants the Fantastic Four to become. That's the worst possible outcome for them.
And then you also love that Super Scroll with his flag.
I did text you about it because it's so funny because it says it's him planting the flag and giving this speech, and there's a dude in the background. He's like, "Oh my God, he's serious. 3 women have already fainted." Super Scroll got women fainting left and right. What's your favorite, Bob?
My favorite is already mentioned the first splash page in number 5 where you see Doom playing chess for the FF with the Vulture and the Science and Sorcery books. I did want to call out one little feature that's funny on issues number 4 through 10, issues number 12, and issues number 14 and 15. You have dialogue balloons on the covers.
Right.
That's not an unknown technique, but it's not super common, and it's funny to see it used that much. And then a real quick question I wanted to ask you, Matt, and then we can kind of wrap it, was have you ever read any of Kirby's Challengers of the Unknown?
I haven't.
That might be interesting to look at a little up after we finish this, just because on one hand, it's absolutely the template for the Fantastic Four. It's Kirby by himself at DC in the 50s without Lee. But on the other hand, there's still a lot missing. And the Challengers comics are fun, but it's just kind of interesting that is the template that this is perfect.
Oh, okay. So we can go back even further into the origins of the Fantastic Four. We're looking at Challengers of the Unknown.
We might. Well, Matt, do you have any hopes or expectations for the rest of the Kirby run, or has this changed how you think about the Simonson, Wade, and Hickman runs we already discussed for the comic or for the podcast?
It does, and it just tells me how everything started and just where some of these ideas began coming to fruition. It's cool.
Well, listeners, we'll be back with our coverage of FF Epic Volume 2 in a month or two. Join us for that. We're probably going to start covering John Hickman's Avengers run here pretty soon, so please follow us on Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks for listening.